Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at an Abzan colored enchantments deck that features a lot of the new retreats from Battle for Zendikar. So let's take a look here, starting with our 1-drops, where we have our first enchantment in Vampiric Rites, single black, and then for 1 and a black we can sacrifice a creature to gain 1 life and draw a card. This is not particularly insane in this deck. It's not like we're stealing the opponent's creatures to then sacrifice, and we actually do want to have some creatures in play to start attacking the opponent with, but it's still nice value to just sacrifice your creatures in response to a sweeper or removal spell. And we're playing this over Evolutionary Leap in this deck, since we don't actually have a lot of creatures, and we also don't mind drawing additional lands in the late game, since we have a lot of landfall enchantments in the deck. Then we have Herald of the Pantheon, which is quite good in this deck, 1 and a green for a 2/2, and enchantment spells cost 1 less to cast, so this is one of the few ways to actually ramp on turn 2, since this allows you to play more expensive enchantments a turn earlier, and whenever we cast an enchantment we gain 1 life, which is also nice. Moving on, we have a Gatecreeper Vine, which fixes our mana and grabs additional lands to give us a landfall triggers for all our retreats. So quite nice in this deck, and then when we don't need the Vine anymore, he can either chum block to protect the Planeswalker, or perhaps we can sacrifice him to our Vampiric Rites to draw a card. Then we also have 1 copy of Reprisal to destroy large creatures, and to maybe destroy creatures that have been enchanted by multiple auras. Instant speed, so we can play this when our opponent plays a pump spell maybe on their turn. So quite versatile and nice to have access to. Then we have a Nissa Vastwood Seer, which also grabs a land to provide us an additional landfall trigger, and she will also quite easily transform since we're also ramping in the deck a bit. And then she becomes Sage Animist, which provides card advantage, and we can easily protect her since we have lots of tokens, which can jump in front of opposing creatures. Then we also have a Bloodcursed Knight, which is quite good in the deck. It's a 3 mana 3/2, but most of the time we will have an enchantment in play, which makes the Bloodcursed Knight a 4/3 lifelinker, which is quite efficient, and she helps us stay alive against the aggressive decks, which is nice, since our late game is pretty powerful. Then we get to our retreats. We have 2 copies of Retreat to Hagra. This is by far the worst retreat in the deck, since the first mode we're almost never activating. I guess we can activate it at instant speed on the opponent's turn with an Evolving Wilds to maybe block and kill a larger creature, but most of the time we will just be pinging the opponent for 1 and gaining 1 life, which is nice, but it's not as good as just gaining 2 life when we are trying to stay alive, or get a +1/+1 counter, which is just Retreat to Kazandu, either gains us 2 life or puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And if we can put +1/+1 counters on our Bloodcursed Knight, we can gain even more life from the lifelink. So the full 3 copies of Retreat to Kazandu. Then we also have the full 3 copies of Retreat to Emeria, which is very powerful in this deck. So it's a split card that either makes 1/1 tokens or gives all our creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. So usually we first want to make a bunch of 1/1 tokens, and then when it's time to kill the opponent, we can give all our creatures +1/+1 multiple times if we cast a card like Nissa's Renewal that gets 3 landfall triggers going. And if we happen to have multiple retreats to Emeria in play, you can imagine our creatures getting +6/+6. So if we have a couple of tokens, that's already enough to kill the opponent. So definitely one of the standout enchantments in the deck. Then we also have 2 copies of Suppression Bonds to keep Planeswalkers in check or larger creatures, and also happens to be an enchantment, so gets cheaper thanks to the Herald of the Pantheon, or can also trigger our other enchantments, as we'll get to in just a second. We also have 2 copies of From Beyond, which is another source that makes multiple tokens, so we get a 1/1 colorless Scion creature token on every upkeep, and we can sacrifice those tokens to add a mana, and then for 1 and a green we can sacrifice From Beyond to search up an Eldrazi, which we have 2 of in the deck. I'll let you guess which ones they are. So another card that makes tokens that we can then at some point pump with our Retreat to Emeria to kill the opponent with. We also have a Gideon, ally of Zendikar in this deck, just another planeswalker that either makes tokens or can give all our tokens +1/+1 forever, which is quite powerful, and of course he can also every once in a while become a creature and attack the opponent. Then we have one copy of Sigil of the Empty Throne, which may seem a little weird since this seems like a very powerful build-around card in an enchantment deck, since whenever we cast an enchantment we get a 4/4 white creature angel token with flying, which is very powerful. But of course it's a little awkward that this costs 5 mana, so by the time you might wanna deploy the Sigil you might already have cast all your retreats to Kazandu and perhaps your retreats to Emeria, which makes for some awkward turns, so I prefer to only play one copy instead of the full 2, so when we do have it and perhaps have a Herald of the Pantheon in play, we can already play the Sigil on turn 4, so that we can follow up on turn 5 with maybe multiple retreats to make multiple angels. Then we also have a Zendikar's Roil, which is actually very similar to the retreats, since it triggers whenever a land enters the battlefield, and this only makes 2/2 green elemental creature tokens, but it's of course still very powerful, as 2/2 tokens are indeed larger than 1/1 tokens. Then we also have Planar Outburst, which is a reset button in this deck, can just destroy all non-land creatures, and since we rely on our enchantments to make our creatures, we don't mind sweeping the board and resetting it, since we can easily make new creatures just by playing some lands. So this is a nice way to surprise opponents, reset the board and still have all those enchantments in our favor. So we can progress our game plan of just playing enchantments, while still being able to just reset the board at some point. Then we also have Ob-Nixilis, another powerful planeswalker that can destroy creatures or draw cards, and 1 life loss you can imagine is not a big deal in this deck since we have a ton of ways to gain life. Then our first Eldrazi is Oblivion Sower, which can easily provide multiple landfall triggers in 1 turn, which is why we are playing him, since it's all about the landfall triggers in this deck. And then we also have Nissa's Renewal, which is the other very powerful card, gets 3 landfall triggers going. And then our final Eldrazi is Ulamog, which provides some nice inevitability, as he can exile 2 permanents when we cast him, indestructible, and he will exile the top 20 cards whenever he attacks, so usually kills in 2 attacks. And of course we can ramp him out thanks to our From Beyond, which makes those Scion tokens we can sacrifice for 1 mana. And we are also ramping with our Nissa's Renewal, which is not the primary goal of Nissa's Renewal. The primary goal is of course to have 3 landfall triggers, but we just happen to be ramping for 3, which sets up our Ulamog nicely. And then our mana base, lots of basics to fetch with our Renewal, our Gatecreeper Vine and our Evolving Wilds. So 3 plains and 3 swamps, as well as 5 forests. And then we have access to one of the man lands, a Shambling Vent, which is also nice since we can in the late game animate him before playing a land to get maybe +1/+1 from a retreat, which is nice. And then we also get Canopy Vista, which is one of the new lands. And then all the check lands here, so 2 Woodland Cemetery, 2 Isolated Chapel, 2 Sunpetal Grove, and then the all-star of the deck, Evolving Wilds, which not only fixes our mana, but also provides 2 landfall triggers with just 1 land. So very powerful with retreats in play, and you often want to save it until you've already played the retreats instead of just using it turn 1, if you have that option, since then you will get the 2 landfall triggers. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks acceptable. So let's keep it. So if we want to play the Gatecreeper Vine on 2, we'll have to play the Sunpetal Grove on 1. And our opponent leads off with a very good turn 1 play here. Glory Chaser. Had our opponent been on the draw, then Gatecreeper Vine could have blocked it. So does Evolving Wilds change our play? It does if we want to play a land on turn 4 that comes into play untapped, but it looks like that's not going to be the case since we're going to play the Knight into the retreat or retreat into the Knight, So we can just play out the Sunpetal Grove here. Next turn play Swamp plus Gatecreeper Vine, grabbing a Forest most likely. And then we have to decide if we want to play the Bloodcursed Knight on turn 3, or if we want to wait, play the Retreat first to make sure that the Bloodcursed Knight can survive a 2 damage burn spell. Meanwhile, our opponent is kind of going off here with Glory Chaser, Titan Strength. It's gonna become renowned, so can start attacking for 2 every turn, unless we can double block it. Yep, let's go ahead and play Swamp, Gatecreeper Vine, get a Forest. So we have double green, double white, double black, and they'll all come into play untapped. And I think we do wait on playing out the Knight, since it's very bad if our opponent can kill it with a burn spell. This is fine. Ember Hauler, yep, so that's another reason to not play the Knight yet, since the life gain is going to be very important here. We could block the Foundry Street for sure, but we might want to keep him around to either block the Denizen if it's only a 1-1, or to be able to double block the Glory Chaser at some point. Can always block the 2-2 next turn. Alright, so let's go ahead and play out our retreat. Pause a turn, next turn we get to go Knight plus Evolving Wilds. Drain our opponent for a bit to gain some life back. Alright, there's the Fiery Impulse we were fearing. Opponent uses it now, which makes it more likely that he won't be able to kill the Knight. 5, 6, 7, 8. So we go to 1 if our opponent sacrifices the Ember Hauler here. Which is not dead yet. And Evolving Wilds will gain us 2 life so that the Menace alone won't be able to kill us. So yeah, if we go to 5, then 2 damage here and 2 damage here is not going to be enough to kill us. And then we'll have a Knight on defense. So we're actually kind of stable unless our opponent top decks something. And I guess there's no reason to wait. And let's get doesn't really matter here. Let's get a Plains. Pause a turn and hope our opponent doesn't top deck anything, although they did get to scry with the Titan Strength. Chandra is gonna pump the Denizen, but if the Denizen attacks we can just block it. Opponent attacks with everyone, so if we block here our opponent can sacrifice it and then we die, so we definitely want to block here. So I think this attack was a mistake by our opponent. Could have just attacked with these two or just with the Menace creature. I guess our opponent can now finish off the Bloodcursed Knights. Instead goes for our face, which is also weird. Yeah, I think our opponent's made some mistakes this game. So now we get to attack with the Knight to ensure the 4 life gain. Play Nissa, play a land. And go from there. Go to combat. Attack. And I'm attacking because I don't want to risk our opponent drawing another Impulse and killing our Knight with Spell Mastery, because then we don't get to gain any life with it. And then next turn we get to play the Renewal, which is gonna put us out of burn range for sure. Get a Forest. Play the Chapel. Gain another life. For opponent attacks with Chandra, do we block? I think we do with the Nissa, just to be safe. Opponent can't transform the Chandra this turn, since they only have one spell. Alright, that's not bad. Opponent gets to hit us for 4, hit us for 1 more. But Chandra won't transform. And then when we get to play Renewal, we should be out of the danger zone. Can't block the Menaced Glory Chaser, which has done a lot of work. You can see how being on the play with a Glory Chaser makes a big difference. Gideon is nice, but I'm not gonna risk it here. Let's see. I think we attack first with the Nissa, since she's going to transform. So we get 2 damage in. Opponent drops to 7. And now we get to go land. And it's whenever land enters the battlefield, so she will transform with the Renewal here. So let's go land, drain our opponent, play the Renewal, get 1 of each, and drain our opponent some more. Transform the Nissa, and at 17 I think, let's see, we can plus our opponent and attacks the Nissa most likely. We also have a Gideon and a Sigil, so maybe just making a token is better here, since our opponent is at 3, and then we have 2 lethal attackers on the way back. Act of Treason, not a bad one for the opponent. So they can steal the Knight to gain life back, or steal the Ashaya token so we can't block. But we're still at 16, so far from dead. Act of Treason steals Ashaya, so they can hit us for 10. Chandra won't transform, since she only transforms when she uses the tap ability. And they might also want to kill the Nissa here. Chandra is gonna finish off Nissa. Might as well have attacked her, but oh well. And no attack with the Ashaya token is also strange, since we're gonna get it back at the end of turn. So our opponent definitely made some questionable plays. Now we get to Sigil of the Empty Throne. Play Suppression Bonds. But yeah, we can just attack. So this wasn't really necessary. Alright, I think we would have been dead had our opponent not made that attack with the Foundry Street Denizen, but we'll take it and on to the next one. Okay, let's take a look at our opener, which doesn't have black and white, so we can't actually cast a Knight. So I think we try another one here. A little slow, but I think we can keep this one. We have all our colors, although no double green for the Zendikar's Roil yet, but we do have a Reprisal and now also a Knight. So let's lead with Shambling Vent, although we could play Evolving Wilds for green in case we draw a Gatecreeper Vine next turn, which might be better here. since we're gonna need double green anyways. And then if we don't draw a 2-drop, either Gatecreeper Vine or the Herald of the Pantheon, then we can just play Shambling Vent into Swamp to play the Bloodcursed Knight. It's gonna be a Jace, which could be problematic here since we don't have an immediate answer to it, so the opponent will gain a lot of value out of it. And there's Gatecreeper, so let's see. We can go Swamp with the Gatecreeper, get another forest, and then next turn play the Chapel, so we can play the Knight. Yep, and that should work. And then on turn 4 we'll play the Shambling Vent. So now we have all our colors. And hopefully we can deal some damage with the Knight here. So we put some pressure on the Jace. Let's see what our opponent is up to besides the Jace. Could be a control deck. Whelming Wave certainly indicates a more controlling deck. And a Perilous Mirror, which can trade with our Knight even if we give it +1/+1 and lifelink, as it's still only 3 toughness. So this is not a problem if our late game beats the opponent's late game, but that's not a given. And Suppression Bonds is decent since this can actually stop a Planeswalker. But for now, let's go ahead and play our Knight. And next turn we can see if we want to play the Suppression Bonds or not. We could even Suppression Bonds the Perilous Mirror. Alright, so now we know what our opponent is up to with Sphinx's Tutelage. And Jace is very, very powerful in combination since it will trigger with every activation. And we don't exactly have the fastest start here. So we can either Suppression Bonds the Jace to slow down the Tutelage. We could also Suppression Bonds the Tutelage just to prevent the activated ability, but that's not really a concern right now. It's not gonna stop all the other things. Or we could also Suppression Bonds the Mirror and start getting in for some damage, which might be necessary here, since Ulamog is our only realistic way of dealing with the Tutelage, and that might be too slow. I feel like Suppression Bonding the Jace might be better for us, so I'm gonna go ahead and play the Suppression Bonds here on the Jace. And attack for 4, our opponent is gonna trade. But that's fine. Next turn we get to play Zendikar's Roil. Turn after we make an Elemental. And hopefully we get to 10 mana before the opponent mills us out. Which seems unlikely, but then again we are a 3-color deck, so we're not very likely to hit runners with the flips here. Alright, opponent could have a counter spell, in which case it's better to run out the Knight instead of the Roil. So definitely another interesting decision. I think we go with the Knight here. See if this resolves. It does. And now we play the Shambling Vent. And then next turn we can either activate Shambling Vents and attack for 6, or we can still play the Roil plus a land. So our opponent does indeed have card draw in the form of Inspiration here. So almost halfway there. Didn't lose anything spectacular besides the Gideon, which would have been pretty good here. Visionary is also gonna draw a card and chump the Bloodcurse Knight. Alright. Let's see what we draw here. Another land. So I think it might be better to play the Roil plus a land here. Our opponent likely still just chum blocks the knight. Alright, it's just gonna be a chum block, it looks like. And let's see if this gets countered or not. Looks like it is. At least if our opponent is packing a lot of counter spells, he's less likely to have ways to deal with creatures. And is less likely to have a lot of ways to draw cards. So that slows down the tutelage. Next turn we can just activate the vents if we don't draw anything and attack. Still didn't lose anything too relevant. So if we can resolve a From Beyond, which could ramp us into the Ulamog, that would be nice. Nissa's Renewal ramping into Ulamog, or even an Oblivion Sower, which even if he gets countered would get us a bunch of lands, would be nice. So we definitely have a game plan here with Ulamog in hand, and even if the opponent will counter Ulamog, we still get to exile one or two tutelages. Alright, I think it's time to fire up the old Shambling Vents here. Play a land just in case, attack for 6. Opponent could use the Vial here. Nope, it's gonna go for a Bounding Crisis and decides to play it right away here instead of trying to ambush or Shambling Vents, which I do appreciate. Although by tapping or Knight, of course, we can't attack with it. But now definitely not gonna attack with the Vents. So yeah, this is a setback. But again, if our opponent is playing cards like this, then he's less likely to fully exploit the tutelage. Although it seems like our opponent just has it all here with card draw, counter spells and interaction. So it's gonna be tricky. There's our Sower gone. And we still have one Renewal left. 7 lands in play, 8 in hand. So we could still draw 2 lands in a row and be able to cast Ulamog in time perhaps. But yeah, I don't think this is a great matchup if we don't have the early pressure going. Also didn't find any retreats which can go wide. And of course Reprisal is not exactly great in this matchup. Alright, there's a retreat at least. So we can play this. But we can't fire up the Vents and attack with it. We can just bump or Bloodcurse Knight, which I guess is better than not doing so. The tricky part here is that if we give our knight +1/+1, then our opponent just uses one of the vials, so our creature can't attack, and then we basically wasted a retreat activation. So we kind of want to just make an ally token and attack with the knight, but we also don't really want to trade with Crisis, but I think we have to at this point. So I think I'll attack with our knight. Our opponent let us attack. And I guess we're just gonna trade here. And then play a land to make a token here. and try to go wide. Pause a turn. Alright, down to 13 cards. There's our last renewal gone, so we're probably not gonna get to our Ulamog in time. Yet another Epiphany. Well, there's our 2 From Beyonds gone, so yeah, I don't think we're gonna get there this game, sadly. The Sphinx's Tutelage deck does look impressive if it gets Sphinx's Tutelage out on turn 3 or 4, but it can be a little inconsistent, since your win condition is only 3 copies of Sphinx's Tutelage. We kind of have to hit our land drops here. So, gonna have to sacrifice our Gatecreeper Vine. See what we draw. It's a Gatecreeper Vine. Not even sure if we have any lands left in the deck, but I guess we'll find out. Well, we do. 1 plains, and let's make an ally and pause a turn. And hopefully we have some other lands left besides basics to try and hit our 10th land for Ulamog. We're not really gonna get past this Perilous Mirror, so Ulamog is gonna have to do a lot of work, and we're gonna have to win in 1 or 2 turns, which seems unlikely. There's another land gone, our opponent activating the Sphinx's Tutelage to mill us once again, so we're gonna have 2 cards left. One of them is gonna be our draw step, so I don't think we can activate the Vampiric Rites anymore, and we're gonna have to hope that our draw step is an untapped land, and then we get to resolve Ulamog, but our opponent still has the Alchemist's Vial to prevent Ulamog from attacking, so we can't even kill our opponent before we deck ourselves. But we can give it a shot. Sigil of the Empty Throne is not going to do it here. Alright, GG's opponent, we are indeed dead. I guess we'll finish ourselves off here with the Vampiric Rites. Let's see what our last card is. It's a retreat. Alright, GG's, on to the next one, I guess. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks acceptable. Nothing too exciting. Let's go with turn 1 Forest. Gonna save the Evolving Wilds for the retreat, since we have plenty of untapped lands here. Playing against could be an elf deck, judging from the picture, but of course pictures can be deceiving, and instead our opponent is on some sort of blue-white deck. Let's play Vine, grabbing a Plains, I believe. We could get a Swamp for Ob-Nixilis, but we also need double white at some point. So the Evolving Wilds can still get the second black source. Alright, Elvish Visionary. So let's see what we draw. Probably just gonna go Plains into retreat. Alright. Next turn, Evolving Wilds, a Swamp. And then we get to play Ob-Nixilis, and then hopefully Oblivion Sower. Alright, a third land. Alright, Shambling Vent is probably better here. Let's... I think we can put a counter here. If our opponent is inclined to use a removal spell, that's fine. And now at least Vine can eat the Visionary if it attacks. Pass the turn. Natural Connection is fine. So, opponent... Well, this doesn't look like a 5-color deck, but just 4 colors. So could definitely have some of the Converge cards here. Woodland Wanderer, alright. So we get to tap out for Ob-Nixilis and kill it. Could also put Suppression Bonds on it, but it feels safer to just kill it right away. Yeah. Let's gain 2 life here. The Visionary probably won't be able to kill Ob-Nixilis on the opponent's turn unless something weird happens. We get to untap, draw a card, maybe play Oblivion Sower. Alright, Green Warden, it's not a bad one, gets back the Wanderer. If we do get to play Oblivion Sower, we will be able to block the Green Warden, otherwise we have to chump with the Gatecreeper Vine. Alright, there's a land, which is good. Draw 1, lose 1. Retreat is interesting. I think we can save that one, although playing the Oblivion Sower after having the retreat in play seems pretty sweet. So we could just play the retreat, play Evolving Wilds and chump block the Green Warden. Seems fine. And might as well put another counter here. Pause the turn. And right now, if I'm not mistaken, Green Warden of Murasa is bugged, where it doesn't return a card when he dies. Opponent is gonna attack Ob-Nixilis with both. I'm gonna let that happen. And let's see, we can pump both our creatures, giving them +1/+1 until end of turn. Well, we probably just do this. And then make a token. End of turn with Evolving Wilds. Woodland Wanderer, that's fine. And here, let's get another white source. Make a token. Put a counter on here. So we get a nice big blocker going. Probably gonna Suppression Bonds the Wanderer, or we can just play Oblivion Sower, which is also good. So let's see. Play the Sower. Should have enough toughness to still block the Wanderer to save Ob-Nixilis. So let's draw a card first. Find a retreat. So let's go ahead and play the Oblivion Sower here. Targeting the opponent. Even if he gets countered, he will still trigger since it's on cast. So this spell shrivel is totally fine. And looks like we only got 1 land. So I'm gonna put this here. And then play another land. Make a token. Put another counter here. So he can block the Woodland Wanderer. So we have a giant defender. Not going to attack. Telling time is fine. So looks like a blue-green ramp/control deck. I do like the fact that our opponent's playing a Natural Connection, which is an instant together with those counter spells. So if the opponent doesn't play anything worth countering. He can just ramp. Reclamation stage is unfortunate, but at least we got some value out of... Well, decides to go for retreat to Kazandu instead of Emeria, which is interesting. Let's block like this. There's not too many instants I can think of other than pump spells our opponent could have here. Yeah, this seems fine. Could just block like this, but then we take some trample damage. This seems better. Visionary is fine. So we don't even have to use the Suppression Bonds on the Green Warden, we can keep it for something larger. 3, 6, 7, 8, so we're one turn away from Ulamog. So if we play From Beyond, we will have Ulamog. Let's plus Ob-Nixilis. Forests, alright. Let's play Retreat. Play From Beyond. Play a land, make a token, and might as well put a counter here so it can block and aid the Visionary or trade with the Reclamation Sage, although might as well block with the 1/1 then, and pass a turn. Opponent will have to spend some resources getting rid of our blockers to try and kill Ob-Nixilis, and then we just get to play Ulamog to sweep up whatever our opponent has in play. The almighty Gatecreeper Vine. And no attacks from the opponent is great. Could still have a counter spell up, in which case we might not wanna play out Ulamog quite yet. Even though we do get to exile 2 permanents, it's not really worth losing Ulamog when we can just do other stuff instead. So maybe this gets countered, who knows? Doesn't. Let's play Evolving Wilds. Alright, our opponent's had enough. Put a +1/+1 counter on our ally. Don't have any Eldrazi left in the deck since we already saw the Oblivion Sower. So let's pass the turn. Not really in a hurry here. Opponent on 5, 6, 7, 8 lands. So still pretty far from Ulamog himself. Think we keep up the Evolving Wilds as like some sort of combat trick here. Gaia's Revenge looks pretty silly looking at our Gatecreeper Vine. And now that our opponent is tapped out, we can play Ulamog. Let's play land first. Make an ally, put a counter, I guess, still here. Play Ulamog. Exiling this and this. Plus Ob-Nixilis. And pass the turn. And if we ever find one of our Nissa's renewals, we can pump the entire team and attack for lethal. But we can also just kill our opponent with Ulamog unless our opponent finds an answer to it. Okay, get some more tokens. Evolving Wilds. Alright, so we're getting pretty close to just killing our opponent with damage here. Oh, we only have 1 land left. That's unfortunate. Well, I guess we're playing this then. Let's keep growing this ally. Could have activated the Shambling Vents here to attack. Could have also played the retreat first before playing the land, of course. But it doesn't really matter here, since Ulamog is gonna get the job done. Gideon is also a nice one. Let's see what happens if we Gideon and ultimate him right away. This is a nice board state. Yeah, I don't think we can actually kill our opponent yet, so might as well make a token attack with Ulamog. Alright. Play our retreat. Pass a turn. Opponent has his own Ob-Nixilis. Can't really do much besides killing our 5/5. +1s instead. Nissa. Alright, not bad, but our opponent is just dead here to an attack. Doesn't have any forests left to get, since we exiled them all probably. Nissa is gonna plus. Untap, get a bunch of tokens. Our board is getting a little messy here. Ultimate Gideon. And I think we can kill with damage here. Could have also reprisaled the Green Warden, put the Suppression Bonds on Reclamation Sage. Let the AI figure out the blocks and see. Yep, we got there with damage. Alright, sweet. I wanna thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this gameplay. And as always, have a nice day.